Before we get all excited about being anxious to cut out your pattern so you can get your first demo done, first thing you want to do is you want to lay out your material that best saves you as much wasted space and wasted material as possible, because material is not cheap, especially if you have to pay for it. So what you see here is, if you look closely, you see the lines that are formulated on this here piece of material. Well, you see how tightly spaced I have these pieces. Very tightly spaced, less than a half an inch, 3/8 inch in between. This particular piece, I actually cut off 4 back pieces. There's 2 laid out on here across the bottom. Here goes another one here, which I cut out, and here goes another one. So these 4 pieces I've cut out of here, and I also was able to cut 1 crotch piece out of the section at the end. So you want to maximize your space that best fits everything. The way you save money in the long run. When you save money, you make money. All right. Next thing I want to do is show you how to sew your pieces. Then this particular piece, this is the crotch. We are going to fold it with the front inside, from corner to corner, like a J. Almost like a J, where it looks like a J. Then we're going to pin it together. But we need to leave enough space, I would say, to pin it about 1 inch in. That way when we sew, our pins don't get caught up in our sewing machine, in our foot of our sewing machine. Okay, so, like so. Then we're going to be ready for the next step. Once we sew this in here, we open it up, we attach it to our bottom. We sew our bottom across. I will show that in 1 second. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, what we're doing here, we're going to sew along this bottom edge right here so we can finish our crotch piece. There we have it. We have our crotch piece sewn. Once we turn it inside out, there we go, voila. There we have our crotch piece. As you can see here, I have already sewn my crotch piece, the J that goes with the actual back piece. I actually used a serger sewing machine to sew this. I have a serger as well for finishing touches. Okay, now I have already sewn this here just to show you in brief detail what it partakes. You fasten your crotch piece to your back like so. So my next step is to actually sew on a black trim that goes from here all the way around the edge. But first we have a little excess on the side here. So what I will do is I will trim this off, and then I will place in here, I will place my trim. Once I place my trim, I will sew my trim on, sew my elastic on, and it'll be a finished product. As I stated, the first thing I need to do before I sew my trim on is I have a little overage here, and I have a little tiny bit of overage here. So what I will do is I will take these scissors here, and I will actually get rid of this little bit of overage. Very simply, just by cutting a tiny piece off. Like so. No more overage. And I will do the same thing for the other side. Being that I am right-handed, it's going to be a little bit more orthodox for me to sew this way. But, as you can see, I will cut here along this edge just to make it smooth. A little smoother together. Like so. So now, alright, so now you have two edges that can flow smoothly once the trim is on. See how much smoother that looks here. It's a continuous line. Here it's also a continuous line. So now we were at our trim. In our trim, I have chosen some Oritz 5/8 inch fold over elastic. So as it is placed on my product, I will be fold over along the edge, and I will sew. I will place this elastic just to briefly show you how I will do this. I will fold this elastic over all the way around the edge, like so, and then I will sew it on. That is our next step. Okay, now that we have our trim in place, we are going to proceed to put this trim on. So it's a very delicate measure here, trying to hold and sew at the same time. Okay, so you ready? Here we go. I'm not no professional at this, and this is a older machine. I don't have my pins in place or have this trim glued on here, so I'm going to take my time now. I just want you to get the concept of what's going on. Make no mistakes on my first tutorial. So as we had a round area here, we got to hit that turn width. So now we have concluded with that. Let's just pull our piece out here and see what it looks like. Alright, so now we have our side trim on. Let's see what our finished piece looks like. Once we get our side trim on, we got our side trim all the way on there. Now I'll take and I'll snip this excess off here at the top. Alright, and then once we add our other piece, a trim to the side, then we'll proceed with our backing. For those of you that are still watching this video, as you see, I have stripes. So therefore I have a center. Whenever you got stripes, I got in the center, I got exactly at my pin here marking my center point. And on the back, I know that I have centered, this line is the center of my back piece. So I had lined my center of my back piece up with my stitching in the back that is evenly in the piece of material. So once I have it aligned and I have it set, I will turn it inside out. Once I turn it inside out, like so, and I will line that up with my front, if it'll allow me. Okay, so now that I have that where I want it on the front, I will proceed to mark my prod piece. I have it at 3/4 inches here. That means I want to mark this one at about 3/4 inches as well. So I'll come across, I'll put a pin here, just so I will not lose my place. I want to pin it level. Alright, so I got 3/4 here. Give or take. And then I'll come back over here and I'll mark this at 3/4. About there. And these are for only from reference points. So now I got 3/4 here. I got 3/4 here. But now this one right here is a little long. So I'm going to take this one back just a hair. Which is doesn't really matter because it's going to be so minutely effective to this that it's still going to come out the way we want it. So, got my 3/4 back on here. Okay, so now that I have my front piece all marked out, I need to go to the back. The back is a little bit more longer, so we know that we have the front. We want to match the front up with that center line on this material. We want to match it as close as possible to the center line on the front. Alright, so now we want to bring this up to the same length, 3/4 inches. Now I have a rounded back here, so it's going to be a little difficult. In my next product, I will actually form that to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so we got 3/4 here. Put a tack here. Put a pin here just for my reference mark. And I'm going to go over here. And I'm going to put 3/4 over here. For my reference mark. now that I got the ends, now what I need to do is I need to mark my middle. And being that it's rounded, it's a little more difficult, but it should still conform to where I want it. It's just that I gotta hold it off the board, get my mark. And it doesn't have to be too exact, because I just want to make sure there's no gap in the slack. Okay, so we got 3/4 there, 3/4 there, as we can see. We're going to do the same side the other way. I'm not even going to measure this, I'm just going to kind of eye it. Like so. Okay, so now we're pinned. We're at good pin status now. Okay, so I guess you're wondering what the next step is. That we have it pinned. Now we want to turn it inside out again. Okay, so now that we have our brief all pinned and ready to go. Now, those pins on the back side are not doing me any justice. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to replace those. I'm going to take them out. Because now that I have my marks, I'm going in a whole complete different direction. So, my pins need to be a different way. Okay, so now you see. Okay, I'm going to do it back the same way. That front mark was actually just to get my marks where I want them. This back is the essential part of it all. Where it all comes together. Almost saw my finger in there, folks. Okay. So, we got that, we got that. There's 2 more pins here. Okay, folks, so there, now we have it. We have our back pinned, we have our back pinned, and we have our front pinned. Like so. Now for our final step, all we can do is sew on the band, and we got a finished product. Okay, folks. Moment we've been waiting for, the grand finale, bringing it together. My foot pedal's too far under there. Okay, so we got the front part sewn. Yay. As you can see, the front part is sewn here. And as you can see, how our back looks. Now, all we have to do right here is remove our pins. We'll get our pins removed. Nice. Remove our excess thread. Okay, now there we go. That's finished front, finished back of the crotch piece. We'll trim that up once we get done here. But first I want to finish sewing this back so we can finalize this. Write this one in the history books. Alright, put my foot pedal down. Need a couple turns, get the thread going here. Alright, we've got a couple of threads turned. And I'm going to remove this pin since I no longer need it. This time, I'm going to make sure that material a little tighter than I actually wanted it to be, but that's all good. Okay, so now that we got our back sewn here, we're going to remove our pins. Alright, and remove one from the beginning. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to trim off our excess thread from the inside and the outside. Like so. Remove our excess thread from the front or the back. Remove our excess thread from the outer or the back. And then we're going to move our excess thread from the inner to the back. Alright, now we have a finished product. All nicely laced. Kind of fell off here a little bit on the line because I took my initial pin out a little bit too early, but that little bit is not going to hurt anything. Overall, we got a pretty decent product, pretty decently lined. Now we can actually, if we want to, trim off this excess, which I normally do. So I'm going to take my scissors now and just trim off this excess. No need for having all this excess material back here. I'm going to get it as close as I can without coming close to any any stitches. Being I am right hand, I'm cutting this way. I should actually have some smaller shears for this, which I do. Close hand. Alright, let's get this trimmed up real nice and pretty so we can see what we're working with. Gotta kind of like went over that corner there a little more than I wanted to. So little rudimentary on the cutting. I could give you a better cut, which I will, but right now I just want you to get the fundamentals of what just happened. Okay, so this one right here. As you can see here, I have our finished product here. I turn the inside out just so you can see the intricate stitching that goes along the back of it. And I just used a regular sewing machine for this with a double needle. Okay, so now that we have our finished product on here, front, the back,